Thank you for joining us. We're having a look around today at Sir James's collection, which is the Gulf War collection, as part of our continuing series of the vehicle walk rounds. So come and join us. Well, hi Si, and thank you very much for having us to look around the Gulf War collection.
No, you're welcome. Thank you very much.
So let's start with this one.
Righty-ho.
You were just saying this is called the piggyback.
It is. It's a little bit of an unusual one. She's a Land Rover 90, short wheelbase, but she's not your common 90. She was made primarily for the parachute regiment. She's a piggyback, which means the lines that you see across your side and my side, and down the side, the rear quarters are demountable. So she was designed with the idea of putting two of them on a medium stress pallet and throwing them out of a Hercules.
So one would be on top of the other?
The first one would drive onto the pallet with a couple of ramps in front of it, so it would lift the nose and put the backside down on the ground, and the second one would drive up a couple of ramps and put its front wheels on the back of this one, and then everything would be flat packed, loaded on a Herc, and then thrown out for the para guys. So she is a little bit unusual. I believe they made 27 of them, and 11 of them they turned into Pathfinders, Dinkies, smaller version of the DPV that we'll see in a minute, which makes her one of 16. And not all of them obviously made it out of service. Some got damaged, some got destroyed, some got broken up, so there aren't too many in private hands. So it is an unusual little 90 to have. Belongs to B, it's her wagon. She was headquarters, she was assigned to 2 para, start to finish, and she was a headquarters wagon, factory fitted for radio, so she does have her radio gear in her as well.
What is the radio gear?
Now that's a very good question. I'm not a radio expert, so she has no, it's Klansman, it's all Klansman.
Yeah, of course it is.
You have a 351 oblique 2, so 351 is a man-pack cade radio fitted into a vehicle and it becomes an oblique 2, and you have the 353s, the DMR, there's a 321 hidden around there behind there somewhere.
So Klansman's about the 60s vintage, isn't it? 60s?
Well, it took over from Larkspur. Larkspur was
Larkspur.
60s. Klansman, I believe, came in the 70s rather than 60s, and they started phasing Klansman out in about 2004 as Bowman was making an appearance. So Klansman was still operational at the time of Optelic, so she was an Optelic wagon. So that's Second Gulf Iraq 2003. But Klansman was on the way out, and by 2008 we'd gone completely over to Bowman at that stage.
Yeah. So where did you find this? Was it one you were looking for?
No, it wasn't. A chap came down to the workshop with this and asked us to quote him to fix it. He knew its history and he knew what it was, but it needed some extensive work. So we gave him a quote to fix it, and I got a call a few weeks later to say he was thinking of selling it. Would I be interested? And of course, yes. I mean, it's quite an unusual vehicle to have. So so we bought it, and we thought it would just be a nice piece for the collection. So we bought it, stripped it all down, restored it, fixed it, and now she's one of many vehicles that we seem to have accumulated.
Your ever-growing collection.
I know. It's turning into a bit of a mad obsession.
It is.
To be honest.
It's fascinating to come here. Every time I come, we see something different.
Thank you.
So this bit actually unbolts.
Yes, it does. Yeah, unbolts completely. You have some pins here. You have some old-fashioned door-type bolts inside, and it does come away completely.
Okay. Installed inside.
Yes, it is. Yeah, everything's flat packed internally.
Fascinating. You've got the antennas on it for the radios.
Yes, yeah. Her antennas are on. As she was out this afternoon, we were doing a British Legion event locally, and we thought we'd take her out in all her glory today.
No, it looks good. It's great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Land Rover number 2.
Right. Yes. Where to start with this one? This girl's been with us the longest. She was the one that kick-started the collection, so to speak. Before then, we'd had various other military vehicles, but the collection wasn't really cohesive. So we decided to get rid of everything and start again, and this one came up for sale. She's unusual. She's not 100% original. I do believe that there were 2 1/4 original ones that came back complete from the first Gulf. So they were used by 22 SAS, A and D squadrons at the time. B squadron went in on foot without vehicles, and G squadron was at home at the time. So we had A squadrons and D squadrons out there at the time, and they used the DPVs or Pinkies as...
I was going to say, this is the same format as the Pink Panther?
Yes, it is. Yeah, it's just so that the Pink Panther's expiry turned into this, and they still rename... Technically it was called the DPV, the Desert Patrol Vehicle, but the guys referred to it as the Pinky, so it kept its name as the Pinky. But these took over then from the Series 3 Pink Panthers, which were later then superseded by the Wimmicks when the Wimmicks came out. So parts of her are Gulf 1 veterans, other parts we've had to fabricate and remake. She's a very interesting and unusual vehicle. She carries a lot of equipment on her that you don't see on standard British Army Land Rovers.
Smoke dischargers.
Smoke dischargers, yes, CVRT. They use CVRT smoke dischargers on the Pinkies. A lot of them had winches on the front, either the Husky or the Warn. Yeah, it's the Warn 8274. So we've seen a few of them with 8274s on or Huskies on them. The two standard weapons are obviously the GPMG up front and the 50 cal on the back. But as for personal weapons, the guys used a lot of American stuff, so the M16s, the Mini-Me's. Mini-Me wasn't a general British Army weapon at the time. So she would have carried rocket launchers, the Law 80 or Law 94, but it's known as the Law 80 due to its size, 80mm, 66s. She carried, some of them carried tripods and theodolites. The radio, the PRC 319, was specific to these group of guys. It wasn't a vehicle-mounted radio, so it was mounted in a Bergen, carried on the back, and it was only
the man pack.
It was. So, but if we put it in its Bergen, it stays locked up, and the guys don't get to see it. So it's more there for display, but that's not how it would have been used on the vehicle. They used communications between vehicles was the Cougar, recall Cougar. So we have a Cougar setup around that side. I won't come all the way around. But if you had a look in there, you have the recall.
I shall have a look.
Yeah, that's it. So you have a Cougar radio in there, and that was what they used to communicate between themselves and between vehicles. Thankfully, we had a couple of good friends that were in the regiment and served at the time over there, and they managed to pass on that information to us. So it's not one of the usual ones that you see with a load of kit hanging off of it. I'm kind of the mind that I'd rather leave something off the vehicle if I'm unsure than put something on that wasn't quite correct. And it's only, as I say, going to some of my good friends that have been able to say, did you use this, did you have it? Yes, we did, and then we'll put it on, and things like that. But she was, as I say, she's been with us the longest. She's been with us about 5 years, and it took about a year to replace some of the missing bits, fabricate some of the missing bits, and as you can see, she's incredibly dusty and dirty at the moment. But we're not a great fan of squeaky clean vehicles. They need to look like they've been used.
I agree. I personally prefer vehicles that look like they've been used and as they would have been in service.
Yeah, and we're not prissy about them. We do let members of the public climb aboard, have a look, within reason. So, we don't mind. We're not too precious about them.
It's not to say I don't appreciate the immaculately well presented.
No, true.
But everyone has their preferences, and I think that's great.
Yeah, true.
So from here we can see the Cougar. This is the Cougar over here.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
It is. Yeah. I'll make sure I stand in the way of it first.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah, true.
So that, and there's the Laws above there. That's where that will be stored.
Yep.
Yeah. That's cool. So coming onto the back here. Another Law over there.
There is. Yeah.
Oh, that's right. The 50 cal.
50 cal with 800 rounds of ammunition. Surrounded by 160 litres of petrol.
Oh, that's a good combination, isn't it?
I think you've got to have big stones to be in the back of one of these. Lads must have been incredibly brave, or a little bit nutty. But I wouldn't like to be the guy that's surrounded by 160 litres of petrol in a firefight.
I think I remember seeing these going around on the M25. I think they were generally green then, and they were in pouring rain and howling wind, and the guy's still sitting them like they are now.
They are.
You think, God, even to do that.
I learnt an interesting little factoid about this. A few months ago, I was beavering away in the workshop and looked up, and Rusty Furman came in the door for a visit.
Right, yeah.
And Rusty and myself got speaking, and Rusty Furman was in charge of writing up the report of the trials of these in Botswana pre-Gulf War. So that he was involved in the trials of these as well. So, and I didn't know that, so I was able to pump him for a while about various bits and pieces and the likes and dislikes. Although I can't quite remember much of what was said, I was a little bit in awe of seeing Rusty saunter through the doorway. The last person on the earth I expect to come into the workshop.
But it's interesting, as you say, that the close confines in there with the fuel that goes all around you. In the desert, you'd just be cooking in it, wouldn't you?
You would.
In Europe, you're freezing in it.
Yeah, you would. I think it was a practical vehicle. The guys seemed to like them. There were a couple of vehicles that they didn't like. The LSV, the light strike vehicle, being one of them, and the guys didn't rate them at all, and left 2 of them in Kuwait, I believe. Buried 2 of them out in Kuwait. So to the best of my knowledge, they're still there, but they didn't like them. But all the guys that went out in these came back in them. So there's got to be something to be said for their reliability, I guess.
And when you consider the abuse they took, and also the weight that was in them.
Exactly. You know, a standard Land Rover 110 has got to be in the region of about 2.2 tons, 2.3 tons. And I believe that with the Under Armour in it and all the bits of kit on, you may have been nudging closer to 3.5 tons, and that's an incredible amount of weight for a vehicle, you know.
Not counting the weight of the fuel and the ammunition.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
that's
it is. It's a heck of a strain on the vehicle, so I'm not surprised that many of them didn't come back in one piece.
Yeah. It's interesting. Camouflage is the grey and yellow, as we said, rather than the pink.
That's right. Yeah. No, it is. You're absolutely right.
It's interesting. It certainly looks like a business vehicle, doesn't it?
It does, and it seems to catch everybody's attention wherever it goes. I think it's more because it's more for the fact that it's got so many interesting things on it. You know, lots of eye candy, lots of things to look at.
It is an interesting vehicle to look at. You've got the smoke discharges on the back.
We have, and the smoke discharges confuse 99% of the public. The amount of people we see, men, women, and small child, come up and squeeze these. And then they'll turn and say, well, what are these? And they're usually surprised to hear, you know, that they are smoke discharges. But it's always one of the primary questions we get asked. What are these things? And people always tend to dimple them in and walk away. Maybe it's a cathartic process. Who knows?
Yes, I know. I know that feeling. Yeah. I was just mentioning I spotted the tailgate on it. We were just talking about this was the storage part you were saying?
Yeah, it was the storage part. I mean, if you bear in mind that you had a crew of 3 guys on here, and at worst case scenario they'd need to sustain themselves for up to 2 weeks at a time out in the desert. So they had to carry a lot of provisions, water for the vehicles, water for themselves, fuel, oil, food, rations, you name it. So there was a lot of stowage, a lot of thought of stowage went into these things. So these stowage bins were built in, and they were built around the 50 cal plinth as well. So without debussing everything and showing you behind it, the box is actually moulded around around the pedestal of the 50 cal. Just really to maximise stowage space.
So the crew was 3? Was
3, yeah.
3 crew, and it's just be self-supporting for 2 weeks?
Up to 2 weeks, yeah.
Wow. Which is quite amazing when you look at the size of the vehicle and what it was doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Else, But that is a worst case scenario, sort of worst case scenario thing.
Well, having your home for your home for 2 weeks.
Indeed. I mean, you had resupplies. You had motherships like Bedfords and Unimogs that would come out, so they'd meet up in the desert and they'd get resupplied if they needed to.
Like
so it
the
wasn't
LRDG
complete.
Used to do in Second
Yeah,
World
exactly.
War.
Yeah, it wasn't complete. It wasn't complete isolation, and they quite often work in pairs. I don't think you'd go out on your own. You'd usually have at least a couple of these going out, and you'd have a couple of motorcycle outriders as well.
Well, this vehicle's a bit interesting. I can confess I've seen it before. It's a Spartan, and we actually did the vehicle verification on this.
You did, yeah. Probably one of the first couple of ones that you did.
It was indeed,
this one? Yeah, it was.
So, yes, I remember going around it and looking up numbers and using the Merlin database and all those things to find it all out.
I know, fantastic.
That was good, yeah.
Yes, so she is road registered. She's she's legally road registered now, which is great, and couldn't have done it without your help, of course.
That's right, thank you. Well, yeah, it went well. It sounded great when you were just coming through with it. So.
The fuel's a little bit old. She's been laid up in the workshop, as we all know. We haven't been able to get out to any shows for a while, so she's been sitting with 90 litres of fuel in her for the last 2 years, and I can smell she's running a bit rich. She could do with her legs being stretched, and she's incredibly dusty and dirty, as you can see. Not the easiest vehicle to shoehorn in and out when the collection's got out of hand and she's ended up boxed in by various other things. So we'll give her a good brush down, I think, before tomorrow.
One thing you were just showing me was a map you found.
Yes.
This is interesting, I think, for David's point. So it's Mount Pleasant Airfield in Falkland Islands.
Yes, 1997. So she was out there, and I believe at Temple of War Show back in 2019, we met somebody that commanded this vehicle over there, who was stationed there at the time with the RAF regiment, and he believes he commanded it. He was one of two that were over there. There were 4 in total doing Mount Pleasant Airfield, 2 with the Royal Engineers and 2 with the RAF, and this was one of those 2, and that came with the vehicle.
That must be quite strange, mustn't it? From having something that part of your life in the Falklands, and then you come back here and see the vehicle.
Yes, I know. Yes, yeah, absolutely. I can only imagine how strange it is to be reunited with an old friend. But we find that at a lot of shows, even if it's not the exact same vehicle, you know, we get approached by veterans that have been brought close to tears at times, saying, you know, we served with vehicles. I used to command vehicles like that, you know, and we say, well, hop aboard and familiarise yourself, and if you remember how to start her, go ahead and start her, and it's nice, and it's one of the reasons why we do it, you know, for that little bit of pleasure, and it's about giving something back.
It's very. I've had the similar experiences on my Bedford, where I've actually had veterans talking to it, and you just turn around and let them carry on and walk away.
Fantastic,
But that's obviously now as things go on and time passes on, you see that we get that less and less.
Yeah,
now.
sadly so. Yeah, sadly so.
Yeah. But there's conflicts he's involved in. They're still very much part of.
Yeah, they are very current, you know. So I didn't serve in the Gulf, but I served at the time in South Africa, and I was still serving when the Gulf War started. So I'm now 51 years of old, and you've got kids leaving school whose parents are my age. So it's very current and very relevant, you know. Yeah. And there are a lot of people that can relate to the first Gulf conflict because their dad did it. You know, it's not a question or a case of my grandfather, it was my father.
That's right.
So it's very, very relevant, you know, and the guys that served, you know, a lot of them are local, a lot of them have been out there, they're all still about, you know.
Yes, yes.
So yeah, it's a nice part of history to be involved in from my point of view.
Yeah, and your display always gets a lot of attention at our shows.
It does, and I'm very grateful for that. You know, we did a little memorial board that we put out the front with the names of the 47 guys that didn't make it back from Gulf One, and you can only learn so much from the internet unless you've crashed a plane worth several $1 million. It just mentions the guy's name and that he passed away, that he died. But through having the board up and through meeting veterans at the shows, I've had guys that stopped past and said, I knew him, and then they tell us about the guy, and we get to know a little bit about who that man was, you know, and what he was like, and for us it's very rewarding, and one of the main reasons why we do this.
Yeah, no, I agree, it's very good. So, on with the vehicle.
Yes.
I see we have the smoke dischargers again.
Yes, we do.
You have a lot of smoke dischargers around, don't you?
Absolutely, we need to hide a lot, and as you can see, they're the same as the ones on the Pinky. So the CVRT range of smoke dischargers are pretty much all the same.
The engine is here, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Jaguar J60. Yeah, she's mounted at the front. Off to the side there is access to the engine, and these decks will give you access to the gearbox.
And these are remarkably quick vehicles, aren't they?
They are. They can reputedly do 60 miles an hour forwards and backwards. We haven't put that to the test. You know, I don't have Remy behind me to fix them when I break them. The only person that fixes them is myself. So we treat them with a little bit of care and a little bit of caution, and try to extend their life as long as possible. Yeah. So I haven't put that theory to the test yet. But yes, I do believe you're right. They're supposed to be a very, very nimble, rapid vehicle with a light ground pressure of only 7 psi. You know, that's not much.
Less than a human foot.
Yes, yeah. There is a famous photo floating around on the internet of one of these balanced on a row of pint glasses. Admittedly, it was lifted up and then lowered onto the pint glasses, but the photo's out there. Shows you just how low the ground pressure is.
Yeah, it's fascinating. The Commander's cupola up there, that's a later edition, isn't it?
Do you know, I couldn't answer that honestly. Sure. I don't believe it is. I think that the Spartans came out with that cupola on there.
Okay.
I do believe they did, but I do stand to be corrected. You know, with a collection as varied as ours, I struggle to kind of know all the fine details of everything. It can take months and months of research, but I do believe they came out that way as standard.
It's quite sophisticated, isn't it? With each prism got its own whitewash window screen wiper.
It is, yeah. It's a very complex piece of equipment when you break it down. We were missing a few pieces from the cupola when we got her, and we found a prototype one for sale. So it was off a prototype striker which utilised the same cupola. And there was very little difference in the prototype version to my version, which tells me they must have been around right from the get-go. The cupola had pretty much the same sort of design.
What sort of role did the Spartan actually have?
Reconnaissance, troop carrier. It carried a crew, so it had a crew of 7, driver, commander, section commander, and 4 navigator, driver, commander, I'm trying to think, section commander, 4 troops, 3 troops, 4 troops I believe. Usually used as on a light reconnaissance role, sort of fast attack, quick in, quick out. Can carry troops in the back of it as an APC, I suppose, if you will.
Yeah, like all of them, they were multi-role.
Yes, I imagine so.
Yeah. We were just talking in general about the vehicle and having a look inside, which we'll come to in a minute. We've noticed the markings of bomb disposal. Is that an original marking?
Yeah, well,
or original?
It's a replica of the original marking. So it's homage to 5131 bomb disposal. This is who the vehicle was with from start to finish, from date in service to date being cast. She was with 5131 bomb disposal. So that's a little homage to them, putting their insignia on the back, so that hopefully if any guys that did serve on her, served with her, remembered her, that'll catch their eye, and they come and have a chat to us about it.
So, just having a look inside, we commented on the distinctive smell there is in armoured vehicles.
Yes, and this one hasn't lost it, has it?
Not at all, no.
Synonymous with the fuel and the oil and the heavy steel, and it must permeate into the insides of them.
Yeah.
But yeah, so inside is pretty much as it would have been at the time. So where we were, right up the front is the driver's seat, behind him is the commander's seat. Over to the right hand side where the SA-80s are, section commander would be, leaving a space next to him for troop 1, and then 3 troops down here, giving a total of 7 crew in total. Yes, back to school for me.
Yeah, it's quite compact, isn't it, in the driver's position, or in all of the positions really.
It is, yeah, and once the guys have got their kit on, I imagine it's quite confined in here.
Yeah.
But that was at worst case scenario with a full crew going out, so I would imagine in different roles, if it was going out on a reconnaissance, or in the case of Mount Pleasant Airfield, you may just have a couple of guys in the back,
yeah.
The driver and a couple of guys doing clearance.
Yeah, and you found that map we were looking at earlier in the front, in the back here.
Yes, yeah, indeed, yes.
It's quite a nice thing to find, a bit of
it's nice to get a bit of history with a vehicle, yes it is.
Yeah. One of the other things we were looking at, we noticed that you have the boiling vessel.
Yes, essential bit of kit for the use of making tea, staple diet of the British Army, of course.
Yeah. And the rations are boiled in the bag as well.
Yes, they are, yeah, absolutely. So most armoured vehicles, as you know, or all armoured vehicles would have a BV in the back of them.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting that you've got them. You don't see them that often, do you?
No, not anymore. And there are a couple of newer versions coming out on some of the cells at the moment. But yeah, you're right. You know, it's nice to have it. Nice to try and have all the original kit that goes with it. You know, it brings things like the BV will bring back memories for a guy that walks around the back to have a look, and then. We often hear people say, do you know what that is to his young kid? And he'll explain to the kid how he used to eat and drink from that.
Yeah, which was a pretty central part to a serviceman's life, wasn't it?
Yes, certainly.
In the boiling vessel. Yeah. Okay. I think putting the kit in it does help, as you say, is to bring it to life.
Yeah.
And tells a story to the veterans and even those with interest, doesn't it? So no, I think that's great.
Super.